people go missing overnight who whistleblow. I knew that something wasn't right about COVID. I knew that something wasn't right and matching about the practice. I knew that something wasn't right about the vaccine. Everything in my life regarding my profession was fundamentally wrong. I'm not normalizing this, and I'm never going to normalize this care. That's not what I was taught. That's not what women deserve. I'm going to end up dead. For 11 minutes, they couldn't get this baby out. So basically, she was saying that I was responsible for this baby's death, that I lied, I was dishonest. Many babies have come to him and they have had their organs removed, and the parents have never consented, and the parents don't know, and it's not on the records. I ain't scared of any of you. I'm not scared of you, or the whole system. I'm not scared of you. But I'm going to say something, right? And I hope they're watching this.
This video was sponsored by my best-selling police memoir, The Job's Fuck Secret Diary of a Police Officer. After 10 years in the police service, I finally left and I decided I need to speak out. This book does a deep dive into police corruption, the real reason why the police force is falling apart, and things you will never hear in the mainstream media. You can check it out in the link in the description of this video. You could also grab some merchandise and support me on Patreon. And now, without further ado, enjoy the video. It's Sylvia Rixon. Great to have you on.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, Jay.
Absolutely my pleasure. So we got into contact with each other via doing going on the Good Bad the Ugly podcast. So got to give them guys a shout out. Great set of lads. Definitely go check them out as well. So we got put in contact through Tony from that. And I mean, you were talking to me over the phone over your story, and obviously I've looked into you a little bit. And you came into massive providence in the public eye because you used to work for the NHS, you were a midwife, and as a result of the things what you were seeing and the way you were treated, you decided to then leave, and then you then put this on X, a post on X, which went absolutely crazy. So I'm just going to read it out to you now. So on February 9th, 2024, I walked out of the NHS, not because I stopped caring, but because I could no longer be part of the system that is committing crimes against humanity, criminal harm and manslaughter against women, babies, and midwives. The public must know the truth. Maternity services are dangerously unsafe. Women are lured in under the guise of safety, but the reality is deadly. A patient labored for 10 hours alone behind a curtain with no care. She assumed she was safe, but her baby wasn't. The result, unnecessary neonatal resuscitation. This is criminal neglect. Vaccine evidence is not safe or effective, but sold as such. Labour wards have been running with as few as 2 midwives per shift. This is a clear risk to life. Midwives are doing 12.5-hour shifts without food, water, or rest, often responsible for up to 20 patients at once, jeopardizing lives in a system that refuses to listen. The evidence is clear. Outcomes are worsening and avoidable deaths are happening. Inquiries lead to more paperwork, not better care. Managers are complicit, failing to stand up for their staff while knowingly allowing these unsafe conditions that lead to harm. Vital funding cuts have halted essential progress in maternity services, leaving women at risk. Birth choices are being denied despite EU law protecting them. NHSE, RCM, and NMC are unfit for practice, allowing harm while pretending to protect. The bullying culture is horrific, forcing midwives to choose between their jobs or their morals. Hospitals are dishonest, misreporting outcomes to cover up preventable deaths. The NMC has blood on its hands, responsible for the suicides of nurses who were abandoned instead of supported. Community care has been stripped back to the bone with minimal, if not zero, education and support for families and communities. This leaves parents isolated, misinformed, and without the help they need. This is not just failure, this is criminal. Midwives are expected to hold up a collapsing system, yet our voices are ignored. And when I spoke up, I was threatened. I was told whistleblowers go missing overnight. I was falsely accused of being responsible for the death of a baby. I have been horrifically trolled and harassed. I will not be intimidated. I will not be silenced. I'm a wide awake midwife and I will fight for the truth. This is systematic. This is systematic manslaughter. This is harm. This is a crime. If you care about maternity services, if you care about women, babies, and midwives, we need accountability. We all need the truth. We all need justice. Now that's a hell of a tweet to come out with. And that did you say that got 100,000 retweets or likes. It went huge, didn't it?
I think it was seen by quarter of a million or something, or 500,000. I can't remember. You know, my social media at that time went absolutely crazy. Jay, you know, I only went live on X on the 19th of Jan live on with my name. I know the account was open from November, but on the 19th of Jan, I thought, right, I'm not going to hide behind a name anymore. I'm just going to put my face to it. And it went. I mean, overnight, I had 17,000 followers. But that created a wave of hatred. Like, she's a troll. She's a shill. You don't get that many followers. Well, I did, because there's not been a midwife that's come out and actually said, I'm going to fucking say something. Sorry. You know, I'm going to say it as it is. I'm just going to
No,
say
sorry.
it.
How come you decided to then put your face to it? Like, how come it got to the point where you thought, you know what, I can't hide anymore. Something really, I need to put myself out there and be the voice for this.
My whole body was dying. Like, I had a new disease, or dis-ease, however you want to call it. My body was absolutely screaming at me that everything in my life regarding my profession was fundamentally wrong. It didn't nurture me. It didn't make me feel great. It didn't make me feel wholesome. I wasn't making meaningful change. The change I was making and the impact I was having with those patients at that time, as you know, being an ex-copper, what you give in that moment is your true love and compassion and power of feminine, like, I'm a mother and I'm a woman and I want to give you that. But then it's gone, because in between you've got all the policy and all the crap. And then you go to the next woman and you inject your energy again into that, and you're like, right, but actually you've made a small part of change in someone's life and maybe saved someone's life, but overall it was so toxic, Jay. And it's a bit like being in a narcissistic relationship. A lot of people have said this about midwifery, or being in a really abusive marriage. Like, it's so toxic that it's only when you leave and you reflect, as like, only the other day I was remembering something and I was like, oh my God, I've forgotten about that, because I'm healing. So I'm starting to heal the older wounds, which means more of the information's coming up. I'm remembering older people that I never remembered before. So for me, it was one woman that labored for all that time behind that curtain. That was the last baby at the delivery I was ever at that gave birth. And I'm so glad she is the last person, because she was sent to me to give me a sign. Now, I could have turned a blind eye and gone back to work the next day and just got on with my job and just thought, it's not my problem, it's part of their system. That is the problem. Whereas I was like, I'm not normalizing this, and I'm never going to normalize this care. That's not what I was taught. That's not what women deserve. I'm not normalizing this. I'm gone. That was it.
It's interesting when you talk about people normalizing things. So when I was in the police, that was there were unethical things happening, lots of immoral practices happening. People became statistics rather than actual people. And it was a case of, well, I have to make this decision, even though I don't agree with it. And I had officers and sergeants speak to me and say, like, I know what we're doing isn't okay, but if I don't do it, I'm going to get put on an action plan. I'm going to get told off by the boss. I'm potentially going to lose my job or be stuck in some back office somewhere. Like, the it's that disconnect, isn't it, between what you believe is the right thing to do and the reason why you join to do your job, whether that is in the police or in the NHS or the care services. And then it's okay, but what does the organization want? And similarly to yourself, you got to the point where you thought, this is making me ill. I can't drive home after a shift and believe that I've done a good day's work and I'm actually failing people while trying to make the organization look better to benefit somebody a lot
I
higher
don't
up
even
than
know.
me. Exactly. Or maybe you can put a face to them, but they answer to somebody else who would never come into contact with you, because the person who's telling you to make those decisions is doing what the person above them wants them to do, who's in turn doing what the person above them, and it all just trickles down. And at the end of it, once it's gone through all those different layers, the ultimate people who are affected are the people that need our help, are the members of the public who are supposed to be looking after and supposed to be treating and serving. So it becomes a case of, how much is your morality worth? And there's that whole thing, isn't there? How much would you sell your soul for? And I always say, listen, your soul is not as expensive as you think. You would sell your soul for a lot less than you actually think. Why do you think you got so much hate with that post?
I think what I've learned is that women are jealous, so are men. And people who hoped to probably gain some traction in their own campaigns didn't do as well as perhaps I did. I think people have too much ego, and the ego is, I want to be the one to make the change. I want to be the one. Whereas, do you know what I've done in this journey, Jay? I've got no remedy. The only remedy I believe is in the grassroots people to rise up. That's the remedy. But I can't enforce or encourage that other than facilitate and be a blockchain of information. So without the information from maternity services, people won't click that something was fundamentally wrong with their care. And people won't click that the fact they had to sign an NDA to get money out of a hospital that they wish they then could complain about, but they can't because it hides under the corporate veil, then live their life suffering that they knew they didn't get the truth. That is the bit that's being pieced together for a lot of people now. So I think for me, I learned that women are really spiteful to each other. That has gone back for centuries and centuries. Women, when you get them in groups, they can be absolutely vile, which is why I decided to stand alone now, because I was in a group with three of us, and those two I'm taking to court because they're the ones that said I killed the baby online. So what I've
Oh
learned
wow.
is stay in my lane, and I will get deviated from it, but I have to stay in the lane. And the lane is, I'm just a facilitator of blockchain information. That is it. I'm blocking and bridging the gap and facilitating that bit to that bit and getting people to think, oh, because what we've got is we've got women sat on one side that have had terrible care that absolutely loathe midwives. And then you've got midwives who are being led by the system, as you know, as a police officer, a policy driven system that doesn't match healthcare and women. It doesn't match. It's a bit like the police say free, they're arresting people for freedom of speech, but you can't change the fact that someone has an opinion. So they don't match. And then you've got this big disjointedness between public authorities and just the living people. So I think what I found was that the women that were being harsh about me were the women that actually wanted the same as me. And beggars belief, I thought, but we want the same thing. What's behind that? Well, it either has to be some unresolved trauma of their own, which has led them to make that assumption of me, or they are in their ego that they want to be the change. I don't care who makes the change. I do not care, but it has to happen. And what we do is we rumble on the bottom, don't we? And eventually the volcano will just go. It doesn't matter who gets to the top of the volcano. We've all facilitated and passed on a baton because people might think, oh, Victoria is one of the only whistleblowing midwives. No, I'm not. There's been hundreds of thousands of whistleblowing midwives. They just haven't had social media for many years to be able to do that. They were just hidden behind closed doors and closing ranks on people because you didn't have the opportunity, unless you knocked your doors of your neighbours, to tell them what was going on. So I feel very grateful that I'm in a position that social media is here, and I think, whew, wow, if I didn't have social media, this would never have happened. So what I found, Jay, was that the people were bringing up old posts, old employment tribunal stuff about me, not actually understanding the bigger picture. But when I joined Jim Ferguson, and because he has quite a following, and I went down a different road of learning about Agenda 30 and what was going on with the vaccine programs, that shifted a lot of the trolling and then I started to call people out online. I was like, right, hang on a minute. I'm not having that now, and I'm going to call you out. And I started calling them out, and they all shit themselves and ran away.
So, you mentioned quite a lot there, and I've just noted a couple of things down which I want to come back to. Social media is a great tool because it can amplify a voice which otherwise would have been silent. And the very fact that you've managed to get so much traction shows that there are there's a need for this conversation to happen. It's like I get loads of police officers and prison officers and everything else messaging me saying, thank you so much for speaking out because we don't have a voice. Because if we say anything, yes, there are apparently whistleblowing things in these services, but you whistleblow against the wrong person, it's absolute career suicide. and then you can't pay your mortgage, then you can't pay your bills and everything else. And the reason why we whistleblow or we raise these issues, I think it also comes down to it's that reason why we joined has been sabotaged. So we join to help people. We join because we want to look after people. Me making sure people are safe, and I'd say more important than yourself, because you are there from the moment of birth when that person starts their life, and you want that to be as safe and as healthy and as positive as an experience as it can be, because it comes from a place of empathy and care. Now, when we see that the organization and the reasons as to why we joined are being destroyed by the very organization that's supposed to be taking care of them, that's why we raise the alarm, because we go, the system is not okay, the system isn't working properly, and we can no longer do what the system says,
Mhm.
and it's the system itself which is the problem. So you mentioned before about like it's as if you escape an abusive relationship, a narcissistic relationship. And it's really interesting that after you've stepped back, then the kind of smear campaign started. It was bringing things up about past things, employment tribunals, without people knowing the full story. Do you think that's done in a way to discredit you? Therefore, they can brush you under the carpet as a conspiracy theorist, or someone who was a disgruntled employee.
I think some of it is the system probably using robot people to come and attack me. Yes, that is one. I think two, I can't fully agree that that's right, because I think a lot of people out there are absolutely unhealed and are traumatized and have probably birth trauma of their own and family trauma because their mother had birth trauma, because birth impacts the relationship you have with your child. So if we think about that, and also I mirrored midwifery, so somewhere in me I was mirroring going into that type of profession, and I've recognized now the work that I needed to do to stop me wanting to be in a profession like that. Because people say, aren't you really sad that you've left? I'm like, Christ, no, I'm totally relieved it's over. I'm just so relieved it's over. And I feel really proud of myself that I've been able to not go into a slump of complete depression, that it's over, that, that I've lost my career, because there's always another door. But I think what I've realized is that there are certain people that just want to go, oh my God, she's doing really well and I want to take her down. There are those people out there. They're like soul suckers. And I think because I decided to take the advice of a very, very, very wonderful woman called Nikita Stark. She's like, post and ghost. Post and ghost. Post, run away. And that's what I did for pretty much months. I was like, okay. And I never, ever read, and I hardly ever read any of the comments, because I don't have the time. I don't have the space all the time to do that. So what I decided to do was post and understand that that post was meant to be there, and then move on. And then I wouldn't look at the trolling. But what would happen is sometimes I would get a notification that something was going on, and then someone would say, Vic, I deal with that. And I'll just go on and block them. I don't respond to them. I just block
Okay.
everybody. So for me, it wasn't the for someone like who struggles with their own self-confidence, self-esteem. I don't. So you could say to me, Jay, Vic, I actually don't agree with anything you've done and I don't like you. I'd be like, do you know what, Jay? Utmost respect for you telling me that. Utmost respect that you feel that way, because I realize that what you think about me is none of my business. It's what I feel about myself. So that inner work that I've done has really held me in a steadfast way to be able to deal with the shit that came.
I really wish that more people had that mentality of going, it doesn't matter if you disagree with me. I would actually rather you tell me that you disagree with me,
Yes.
and that we could have a back and forth, and then we get on with our lives. It's like friends don't have to agree with everything each other say. You can have massively different agreements or disagreements about a really serious topic, which gets you both quite worked up and animated. It isn't an attack on the person. It's just you don't like their point of view or something. And we see too many people falling out or people breaking up over politics or about this or about that because they can't reconcile their differences in that one particular subject. But this then becomes so amplified that people then fall out. And with you saying about the post and ghost, I really like that, because I try to do that. Because what I found is I go, well, why am I going back to the comments? If someone comments on something, why am I going back? Because I believed in the video or the message what I put out.
Yes.
So I'm either going there for validation
Yes.
or I'm going there at a place of insecurity. And if I'm going there for validation, I will want to see everybody agreeing with me, which makes me then feel good about myself, and then it reinforces the opinion I then put forward.
Correct.
If everyone disagrees with me, then it could be a couple of things. It could be a place of insecurity where I'm going, oh, okay, I just want to be liked and be popular. Therefore, I'm now going to delete this post because people don't like it, even though it's something I believe in. So therefore, you're censoring yourself. Or it can be you are you're seeking validation which you're not getting because that criticism is speaking to an insecure place in yourself.
Correct.
And like I said, what I really like about you is that you post and ghost, or you post and you don't really engage with the comments, whether they're good or bad, because you've managed to do that inner healing and inner work. And some of the things what I've seen in different interviews you've done or different posts you put up, I really like that attitude, what you've got in the sense of it starts with me. And if I'm in an unhealthy place, or if I'm in a bad place, or if I've got previous trauma which hasn't been resolved, I'm then gonna project that into the world when somebody criticizes me. And the fact that you're able to take criticism and go, that's completely fine, shows that you have built a robust sense of self. So, with that in mind, how much work do you think people need to do on themselves to get to that point where they can be, they can live their authentic self?
It's a lifelong journey. A lifelong. You're forever evolving. So I started this journey of healing in January of 21 when I went into the darkest place I've ever been. I knew that something wasn't right about COVID. I knew that something wasn't right and matching about the practice. I knew that something wasn't right about the vaccines. But then when you go online and you start seeing that no one else is thinking the same way as you then tell yourself you're freaking batshit crazy because it was censored, and I didn't realize and I didn't understand the media censorship at that time and who controlled the media and who was controlling the social media platforms. So I was like in the darkest place, and I was like, and I'd always had a really interesting fascination with the witch trials of our times. And you obviously are very in touch with yourself, and we understand frequency, and we understand generational trauma, and we understand the vibrational hand down of what remnants of what's happened in our family and in our lives. So when I started looking into the witch trials and becoming heavily involved in evidencing it, it really is fascinating that nursing and midwifery is linked right back to these witch trials, which started in the late 1300s, beginning of the 1400s. And you know, Jay, they murdered, strangled, covered in tar 50,000 men, women, and children and burnt them for being midwives, nurses, apothecary, health herbalists, healthcare, because they cared about the people and they wanted to obliterate their knowledge, because today we now have very little knowledge about our ancestral ways of dealing with the healing body. So when I started that journey, I was on all the medications you can imagine, sleeping tablets, I was on everything, mental health medication, insulin. Oh my God, when I look back, and I was dying. That's how I look at it. I was dying. And from 21 to now, that's how long it's really taking me to feel that secure, that I'm not scared of the police. I'm not scared of what happens to me. I'm not fearful if anything were to come in my life. I'm at a point of such connection to myself that whatever is meant to be, I know I'm on the right path because I'm so connected to myself. As soon as I go off my path, something says, Cooey, you've gone off your path. And I go, oh, okay, thanks for that little nudge and that little distraction. And off I go back down that path. So whenever something happens in my life and it really challenges me, I then sit in it and I'm like, oh, what is this bringing up? What is behind this? So for like my husband, who, you know, he's had a really hard time. He's not always been easy, and he will admit that himself. Neither have I. He's now coming through his own journey because I've come through mine, and it ripples. So I think for the
Amazing.
people out
Love that.
there that are online hiding behind a like fake profile, they get no time from me, because if you are not willing to put your face and your name and be accountable and authentic, it doesn't matter if your authenticity is to be an asshole. That's you. But I'm authentic in myself in truth. So I'm a believer that wherever you're meant to be, you're meant to be. But if you need to start looking in the mirror, you've got to go backwards, and that can take years, decades. And then when you get
Mm-hmm.
there, I get excited. I don't know how about you. I get excited sometimes about what's next that I have to overcome, because I know I will overcome it.
Well, I remember having a conversation with a friend just on that note. I remember having a conversation with a friend about this, and it was, if you knew the adversities you were going to face beforehand, would you want to know? And my friend was like, "Well, yeah, because then they can prepare for them." And I was like, I wouldn't want to
No.
know, because that would be a true test of character. Like, what is the next thing that's going to happen,
Yeah.
and how am I going to overcome it? Because I managed to overcome everything else so far. Like, is there going to be a thing which brings me right to that precipice? And have I built up enough strength and knowledge in able to overcome it? So you touched on mental health and trauma a bit there, and I'm a big believer in, when it comes to a lot of the issues we see in society today, certainly related to crime, to sexual violence, to a lot of things like that. The core of it is traumatized, unhappy, abused kids a lot of the time. Now, I'm not saying that's an excuse. If you've had a shit childhood, then you go on to do awful things, because you get to the stage where you know right from wrong. But I found that psychedelics have helped me quite a lot. I don't know what your thoughts are when it comes to psychedelics, but whenever I've done them, if you imagine therapy is like peeling back the layers slowly, psychedelic is like a spearhead, and you go right into that core of what is painful, and it's distressing, and it can be scary. And a lot of the times is you are remembering things, you are back in that place where such awful things have happened, which you potentially have completely forgotten about. And if you want to get a little more deeper into it, why would the government allow such things like psychedelics, such as magic mushrooms, which grow out of the ground, if they know, well, if you take psychedelics, you don't need antidepressants, you don't need anti-anxiety medication, you don't need to spend hundreds or thousands on therapy, you don't need to be in the system, you don't have to medicalize. If you can take something that grows freely from the ground, and you can go on an introspective journey, granted caveat, you would I'm not advocating someone just goes out and takes a load of psychedelics.
No.
They are powerful. Do it in a safe environment. So I'm not advocating for reckless use, but I believe that such things like that certainly have their place in medicine. And I know there are countries out there which are doing work with that sort of thing. But when it comes to things such as post-traumatic stress disorder, complex PTSD, I think there's definitely a place for that kind of a medicine. And also, Victoria, I think as well, what we need to do is, when someone is struggling with a mental health or is struggling with trauma, what is it we say to do? Speak to somebody about it. So have a community of people around you. Get outside, get into sunlight, eat better food rather than the shit which is in the supermarkets, or the crap which you can just order on Uber Eats. It's going back to natural remedies. And I think it there's a big push from the organizations that want to almost pull you away from that and say, no, no, don't take that. Take this antidepressant, which can cause a side effect is suicidal ideation. And it's getting back to that natural way of being. So what's your thoughts on the natural remedies when it comes to healing? This video was sponsored by my best-selling police memoir, The Job's Fuck Secret Diary of a Police Officer. After 10 years in the police service, I finally left, and I decided I need to speak out. This book does a deep dive into police corruption, the real reason why the police force is falling apart, and things you will never hear in the mainstream media. You can check it out in the link in the description of this video. You could also grab some merchandise and support me on Patreon. And now, without further ado, enjoy the video.
When I was younger, I used to judge anyone that took drugs. I've never taken drugs. Do you remember? Well, how old are you? What year were you born?
I'm 32.
Right. So you won't remember the billboard of Leah Betts.
No.
So Leah Betts died of an ecstasy overdose in the 90s, and it was all over the billboards. And she had like all her tubes on in ICU, and it scared me to death. And I never, ever, ever took drugs, and I never smoked. I never did anything, and I never really drank alcohol. I was always very fit and healthy. I did lots of athletics and cross country and stuff. When I started this healing journey, I went into deep healing. And I mean that I was journaling every day, all day. And I went into the darkest parts of me, the stuff I've done to people, the stuff I've said to people, the stuff I've said about women in midwifery, or I might have engaged in just slagging off colleagues. And I don't know why I even did that or do that about people, because I thought I'm just judging myself. So what I decided to do was really rip apart that, just using healing. So for me, it was about going into a meditation for half an hour with non-touch healers. However, was it early this year, someone gave me some mushrooms and said, I think you should do this. I was really apprehensive because I'd never done anything like that before. And she gave them to me and I took them. Now, I didn't take very many, so apparently I didn't take enough. I only took a very small amount. But what did happen to me was, when I was in bed and I was lying down, it felt like I was meditating, and it was like a reel of camera images of my whole life, just reeling in my brain really fast. And I was like, slow down, I can't catch them all. And I was like trying to remember what they all were, and
Mhm.
it was like somebody was talking to me, or I was talking to myself in another realm. And I remember going, this is real. I know this is happening because I can hear the dog barking. So I knew I was in some
Mhm.
other realm of myself. Now, the only other way I can describe that, Jay, is that when I gave birth to my third son 14 years ago, I astral projected out of my body. I was watching myself give birth from the other side of the room. I watched my husband sat there with me, my ex-husband, in between his legs, giving birth to my son. My dressing gown was right beside him. I knew exactly the layout. It was the most, and I didn't talk about it because I thought I was a weirdo. Now, what I realized then is, how do we not allow women to ever be in that power? Get them on their backs, lie them on a bed, and give them loads of meds and lower their vibration. So I'm at a place in my life now where I don't judge anybody now. And my friend said to me yesterday, she was cutting my hair. She was like, "You're the only person that never judges." Like, I used to be terribly judgy. I do not. If somebody said to me, "I'm gonna do this and do that," I'd be like, "If that's your journey, you've got to go and do it." Like, that's not me consenting or agreeing. However, now I'm like, right, what is growing on the earth has a purpose. Everything that is growing has a purpose. And if you've got to put law on a mushroom, you're hiding something behind it. If you've got to put law on freedom of speech, you're hiding something behind it. So I'm realizing now everything has a deeper meaning. So I'm absolutely with you. So if you saw my bookshelf, it's just filled with mushrooms of the UK, herbs, uh, you know, um, Lost Book of Herbal Remedies. I've got it all. Edible
Yeah.
fruits of the growth of the UK. So I'm literally like, right, we need to go back a step, and we now need to start learning what happened over here.
I think MDMA is having a lot of research done into it with how it can support people who've got PTSD. Now, because drugs have been demonized,
Mm.
we've lost 50, 60 years of potential groundbreaking
Yeah.
research. And of course, the thinking behind that is, well, if someone can have a quick fix, or not necessarily a quick fix, but someone can have a much more natural way of healing,
Mm.
then that isn't going to benefit the company's bottom line.
Yes.
Now, with the mushrooms, I would always caveat it as saying, you know, they are powerful. You need to be careful. So, and make sure you do it in a safe environment. But I would like to see the day where psilocybin therapy, mushroom therapy is brought much more mainstream, because even just from an anecdotal, I mean, I say had a friend, I still have a friend who was addicted to nicotine, they're addicted to cannabis, they had quite a few unhealthy habits, and they had a big mushroom trip, and the things what they experienced, the things they came into contact with, they literally put down their vape and their weed and they never touched them again.
Wow.
Now, in order for them to get, yeah, exactly. So, in order for them to get to that point, in the traditional way, that would take a lot of therapy, a lot of, and also He's managed to repair his relationship with his father because he was able to go back. There are things which I've had happen to me when I was younger, or growing up, and things which I'd forgotten about, or things that were quite painful to remember. That spearhead of an experience where it was like going right into my subconscious, into my psyche, allowed me to actually stand with that version of myself, that younger child, and say, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, I've got you,
Mm.
everything's fine. And I remember waking up, I had the experience, I was at my friend's house, and he was the sober friend who was there. And I came out of it and I was crying. I was near enough hysterical crying just because of all this repressed stuff had just come out. And it was just that, and then I opened my mouth and just all this stuff which I'd forgotten about, stuff which had happened, just came pouring out. And it felt like a suitcase which I've been carrying around for years had just suddenly become so much lighter and so much better. And
Wow.
I can see why I can see why they're illegal in two ways. One, because of the effect they can have on you, and two, because of the healing they can do. Like I said, I do hope that there is a future where more herbal remedies and more natural remedies are brought in. So you mentioned a bit there about when you went into midwifery and you found that you were getting a lot of illnesses as a result, or when you left. Why do you think these illnesses started happening?
I wasn't honoring my true self. So I talk about this in a lot of my podcasts. As soon as I went into midwifery, it was like the oppression was immediate. It was so overwhelming. And I became really nervous. I became really fearful because I wanted to be accepted. I didn't want to be rejected. It raised a big insecurity in me that I wanted to prove to my father and my sisters and my mum that I could make something of myself, that I wasn't just a
Was
mum.
that one of the blockers to leaving as well?
I think that the because the healing journey had started in the 21, I didn't leave till the 24. I was at that point of I ain't fucking scared of you anymore. That's exactly where it got to. I ain't scared of any of you. I'm not scared of you, or the whole system. I'm not scared of you. And I released every bit of fear. It was like going, and I just went, I'm done. I'm done. Now, people will be like, but she didn't. People have said, oh, she's not being honest. People don't know what I went through silently behind closed doors during that time. And it's very hard for me to do that without writing the book that I'm writing. But I can't write the book until I've cleared the fact that I was called a baby killer, because I'm not going to sell a book if I'm a baby killer. I'm not going to, it's not going to have its same impacts. I want to get that out of the way so that can be encompassed into the book. But I believe everything you do is a mirror of you, a projection of you. So if I'm, for instance, I used to only buy everything brand new and everything named. Now I won't even go near the supermarkets and the shops. I'll go to charity shops and I will reuse and then look at something and go and have a feel of where it's come from and go, that's come from a good home. That's come from a nice energy. And I will take it that way. So I'm learning that it doesn't matter I've got mismatched furniture. It doesn't matter that I didn't take my children on holiday this year. It doesn't matter that I don't have a nice kitchen. It doesn't matter that I don't have Botox. I don't care. So I realized that midwifery was no longer mirroring the woman I was becoming, which was my true authentic self. So I think when you are in midwifery, the statistics are high anyway, because you're working night shifts, you're working irregular shift patterns, you're working in a high acute stressful environment. And midwifery labor ward is a bit like a mini A&E. So it is highly intense. You've got to constantly be thinking. So if you're then not eating for 12.5-hour shifts and you're not drinking at times, and sometimes you don't even wee all day, your kidneys, your heart, your body is in a constant stress response, a fight or flight. And then you do that for 2 days in a row, then you go off for one day, and then you go back for 2 nights or whatever. You are ill and you are sick. So I had never really suffered with anything other than the odd UTI in my life, so urinary infection. When I became a midwife, within 18 months, I had type 1 diabetes, and it's not gone away.
Jesus.
So I wear a Libra. And I was devastated because I was like, but I love my job and I'm really good at my job and I never get stressed and I cope really well. But actually, my organs were saying, Cooey, you're really not. And I just thought, I've got to get out of here. I'm going to die. I'm going to end up dead.
You are absolutely echoing similar experiences to me. I mean, I was never diagnosed with like an illness such as diabetes, which is fucking awful. Like, I'm sorry that's happened. Um, but it's there's a few things here. So the effect on the body, what stress has, cannot be understated. Like, and it's certainly trauma as well. Working in somewhere like that, you're seeing amazing things, children being born, but you're also seeing a lot of pain. You're seeing a lot of suffering. You're seeing death. And you mentioned about being accused of harming a child or killing a baby. Like, we'll obviously get onto that as well, because that's a disgusting thing to be accused of. But there's a wonderful book which I've read and I love, and it's called The Body Keeps Score. And it's a book what talks about the effect what trauma has on somebody. It isn't just a mental issue, it physiologically affects you. It affects your nervous system, it affects your brain chemistry, your neuroplasticity. Children that have multiple adverse childhood experiences, their brains develop different, which is one of the arguments for like narcissism or psychopathy. Their brains are just wired differently as a survival mechanism because of what they have to deal with. But like when you was talking about, you were seen as quite resilient, and it's the whole thing of, I don't want to admit that I'm suffering, I don't want to admit that I'm stressed, it's just part of the job. One of the big things I do is I speak to people in the NHS or speak to people in the police and say, you're not a fucking robot. If you are dealing with awful things all the time, it's going to have an effect on you. I had a colleague message me the other day and say, next colleague messaged me and say, I've seen all the stuff you're doing. Just thought I'd let you know. I went to a hanging the other day. Never affected me before, but I can't stop thinking about it. And it's like, right, well, that's a sign that your body's saying to you, you're reaching that tipping point, you're reaching that limit of things going too much. And I was always hailed for my resilience because I could go to incidents and I'd be generally fine, or I'd be well under stress. And if anything, I'd have a full workload, but then also be helping other people with theirs as well. So
Yes.
be increasing my own workload, giving support to people, because that's why we join these jobs. We want to help people, and that includes colleagues.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where I walked into work one day. I'd never been off with stress. I was like, I'm too strong to be off with stress. I walked in and I literally sat down at my computer. I got told what I need to do that day, and it wasn't anything major, and it was just something snapped. And before I knew it, I was shaking. I was on the verge of tears. I was having an absolute panic attack, and I went, I need to get out of here. So I went and spoke to my supervisor, and I said, I'm going home. Like, something's not right. And I spent 2-3 weeks off work as a result. And it was, but then when I went back into work, I was made to feel bad for going
Oh,
off with
the stress.
stress, that I hadn't spoken to anyone sooner. My workload wasn't actually that bad. She
Gaslight,
put out
gaslight,
loads of graphs
gaslight.
and shits.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then the cheeky fucker turned around and said, but if you need anything in the future, just let me know. I'm like, why am I going to come to you when you've just made me feel like shit for having some time off due to mental health? I'm not going to do that. So,
It's the subtle corrosion. It's these subtle
yeah,
comments and the corrosive nature of, you know, I had a panic attack in the car. I've never had a panic attack in my life. I drove to work and I was sat in the car, but I couldn't breathe.
fucking
I couldn't get out of the
terrifying.
car. What's happening to me?
Yeah, you think the world is about to end. It's like a sense of doom.
Horrendous. I remember going to my boss and I said, when I come to work, right? So I use this analogy. When I'm at home, I'm like the mum. I'm the only woman in the house because I'm surrounded by boys and men. And they all respect me. They all look up to me. They all love me very much. And I feel very loved at home. I feel, I've got a very good attachment with the boys. If they want to go off camping for the weekend, I leave them. My son's just been to Boardmasters. He's only 16. And I rang him twice just to say, are you safe and are you well? Because whatever his journey is his. I don't have a controlling attachment of them. But when I was driving to work one morning, I'd left my home as this really strong woman of, right, they've all got their lunches, they've all got their school clothes ready. I'm going to work early at 6:30 in the morning. They're all asleep. I'm going, and I drive to work, and as I'm getting closer, I shrink as a person. It's like
Mm.
something. The energy in my house is like this, like woo, all around me. And then as I get to the building sucks every bit of me. And I said to my boss, about this, and she said, "Is that an us problem or a you problem?"
Fuck off.
That's what she said, and I was like, and it was these little subtleties, and I thought, for being such a right, so you know that type 1 diabetes, as a police officer, if you've got type 1 diabetes, you cannot carry a firearm, right? I think I know that.
Yeah.
You can't be in control of a firearm because your diabetes is too up and down, right? And you, as a paramedic, you will never be able to be first responder in the car on your own. You'll always have to be the second. So
Mhm.
diabetes is serious, yeah? So I was in theatre with a patient about to have a cesarean section, and I was having a hypo. And when I told the doctor, he went and told my boss, because I couldn't leave because the midwife has to be there for the baby if there's no obstetrician doctor. Because there is a baby in a uterus that needs checking, and only 2 people can do it, me or the doctor. So he went out, and my manager came back and was like, "We haven't got anyone to relieve you." I'm like, "I'm having a hypo." So if a woman walks into triage on labor ward, or a patient walks into A&E having a hypo, it's a medical emergency. But because it's me and I'm
Yeah.
a staff member, in the numbers, in the ratio, in the system that's corrupt and crap and terrible and not compassionate, just die on the floor, Victoria. We'll pick you up when you're dead. It was disgusting.
I remember my partner had a really serious chest infection, to the point where she was gasping for air. She was in bed gasping for
Oh,
air.
God.
And I called at work. I was dressed to go to work, and I rang my sergeant at the time and said, "I'm not coming in. My girlfriend is like, she might need an ambulance." And their response was, "Well, we're short staffed if you don't come in. Who's going to pick up prisoners and who's going to attend incidents? And what about your workload?" And then they said, "Well, you either let me have it off as dependency leave, or it's like just an unauthorized absence. But I'm telling you now, I'm not coming in." "Oh well, what can she not just call an ambulance? We can only let you off on dependency leave if it's an emergency." Sorry, if my partner gasping in bed for breath who can't breathe is not an emergency, I don't know what is an emergency. Fuck your organisation. My partner comes first. Somebody else will be sat in my chair and will be doing my same work. So when it comes to the public, yes, of course. What, you can't breathe? 999 on ambulance. We'll get there. What, you're a staff member? You're a number? Oh well,
Go
tough
and
shit.
die.
Exactly. What's mental health support like in the NHS from your experience?
Terrible. So I'll give you a couple of incidences. I saw the worst shoulder dystocia delivery where the baby's shoulder gets stuck in the pelvis and the head is out and you cannot get the rest of the body out. You've got a cord which is in tight in the vagina against the baby's body and will have very minimal oxygen for about around 7 to 10 minutes. It's about 7 minutes. Oh my God, for 11 minutes they couldn't get this baby out. It was horrific. There is no debrief for such traumas. I have been at the birth of, I couldn't even tell you that many baby losses that have already
Yeah.
passed. No debrief. No one emails you to check you're okay. No one rings you to check you got home safe. Then you're at a delivery where a woman bleeds on the floor like a hose pipe on the floor, her blood volume leaving her body. No one rings you to see if you're okay. So when you start thinking about your body in a frequency and a vibration, and all your organs and all of your everything is vibrating at a certain frequency, if it's diminished, every organ will go into some sort of shock. And then you're adding in every memory, every experience, every thought, every emotion. You don't forget the woman's scream. You don't forget a partner's face. Like, these men are traumatized. A guy fainted on my back once. I was like, ah, like he was leaning on me. There is so much, but what you're doing is you're like, head down, pen in your hand. Right, I've got to do OBS here, CTG there. I've got to go and do antibiotics here. I've got to go and do the drug round here. Oh, I need to have a wee. And then the joke is, I'm going to treat myself to a wee. That is the joke of a midwife.
Yeah,
I'm
we say that.
going to treat
I'll treat
myself.
myself to some food.
What the hell are we doing, Jane?
I know, eat it as quick as you can before the radio goes off again, and you need to. Oh, it's been 10 hours. What you doing? I'm just having some food. I've not stopped all day. You can eat when you get home. You needed. It's like, yeah, I understand I'm needed, but I'm probably going to collapse at the minute
Yeah.
because I've not had a drink all day.
Yeah.
Um, and it's also when it comes to lack of sleep as well.
Yeah.
I found it was almost like a competition. who had the least amount of sleep on the shift. Police driving around a police car at twice, 3 times the speed limit, underslept. It's like having a bottle of wine before work.
Yeah.
You know, the effect on your motor system and your neurons and everything else in your body is the same. So if you're absolutely chronically underslept and you're stressed out your eyeballs and you're barely eating, I wouldn't want you near my wife when she's having a
No.
baby because you're not in the right frame of mind.
No, no. And what we're going to realize is that all these systems, they're all crumbling at the same time. Policing, NHS, nursing, midwifery, education, the civil servants, the judiciary systems, the banking systems, because they're all
Yeah.
led by the same ideology at the top. Like people think they're all
Mhm.
individual and like, oh, midwifery's got its own platform, but the people that investigate and then do the new inquiries of the maternity services just make it more task focused, less people and compassionate, which causes more death and harm. And I think I said to you the other day, £27 billion has been claimed from women and families and through harm and death since 2019. 2019, 27
So that's
billion.
what, 4 billion a year?
That's
4 or 5 billion a year?
that is insane money. Like that makes
That's
up
I think that's a
51%.
tenth of the budget.
Yeah, and makes up 51% of all NHS claims. So cardiology, orthopedics, oncology, pediatrics, maternity is 51%. Why? Why not turn that 27 billion into care? Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, into more staff and better facilities and better, like, yeah, it's insane. 27 billion, that is a
And
stupid amount of
you
money.
get less
And then
money for a baby death and a mother death than you do if there is a disability or a harm.
so that's foul.
It's vile. And no one gets justice.
I mean, I'd love to go further down that whole thing. But you mentioned a couple of times about being accused of a baby death. So tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so when I left, I thought, right, I've got no sanctions, I've got no complaints, I've had no coroners, I've never had to be invited to a coroner, I've not been on a fitness to practice. I felt like I was in a really strong position with my union background, with my union head, my previous management experience from jobs before I was a midwife, doing a bit of HR, and I've really always enjoyed a bit about law, employment law and things. And I thought, right, I'm in a good position now to start talking about what's really happening. So I started a group with two midwives. One was retired midwife, one was still practicing, and we started a group together. And I didn't know them, and this was my fundamental learning curve of not trusting, not being as connected to myself as I should have been at that time, and learning that actually, if you involve anybody in your goals and ethos, they're not always going to align. So that's why I stand alone.
Sometimes people have ulterior motives, don't they? And like you said, sometimes it's a case of people want what you have.
Yeah,
You know, if you manage to step away and escape something and they're stuck in it, they look at it from a place of envy rather than celebration. So
yeah,
it's knowing who you can and can't
yeah.
trust. But apologize, go on.
Yeah, no, it's fine. So I started this group with them, and then another midwife contacted me, and he wanted to take the NMC, our governing body, to court, and I was like, absolutely, I'm in, I'm game, I've got no fear. And they didn't align with that because one of them was still on the register, and I was too at the time, because I thought, why do I need to come off the register if I'm just speaking truth? So I had no understanding of what the Nursing and Midwifery Council were capable of at that time. Everything was almost
Mm.
learnt as I had to jump the hurdle. So what then happened was we parted ways. It wasn't very pretty, you know. I was getting screamed at, and I was just like, right, you're done, you're out. And I owned the Facebook group, so I started it. It was always my plan. You don't just wake up one day and go, right, I'm going to start a movement. It was already in the planning for a long time before, on my own. And my ex-husband actually came up with the name. So that was sort of that. And then a month later, a month later, I got tagged on X on a statement that was made that one of the co-founders at the With Women movement was responsible for the death of baby X at Derriford Hospital in October 21, which can only identify me because I'm the midwife. That was at Derriford. that knew the family and was the co-founder of the With Women movement. So I read the statement and I was absolutely sickened. I felt physically sick. And I naturally went into what we just talked about earlier. I didn't take my time to think, but I just went into a natural response of, this is a mistaken identity. I wrote it all publicly. You've got this wrong. I wasn't on shift when this baby was born. And I got really confused by it all. And then I emailed the company that wrote it. And one of the people wrote back, and it was actually her email, because the email on the website was her name at the Alliance. So I emailed her and just said, look, here's my mobile number. Can we talk? She wasn't interested. She had absolutely no, she wasn't going to go there. She was right. I was wrong. And she was like, no, specifically your practice was called into account. And I was like, I'm confused. So basically she was saying that I was responsible for this baby's death, that I lied, I was dishonest, that I didn't go to the coroners. Well, you know, and I know, Jay, if you're called to coroners, you go to coroners.
You ain't getting out of that.
Exactly. So I was like,
if you get called to coroner's court, well, they can summon you. You can be locked up and be forced to go. You're called to court. You can't not go.
So she wrote that, and I was like, what are you talking about? So I went to my head of midwifery, director of midwifery, and I was still employed at the time, because even though I'd walked out, they paid me my notice pay for 8 weeks, which was really strange because I didn't supply a sick note and I didn't go back to work. So they didn't have a document to back up why they were paying me. So I think they were doing it because I'd written to the CEO saying, whatever I do next is for my beloved midwifery and for my colleagues left behind, or those people left behind, which means colleagues and patients. So I think they paid me to keep me silent for as long as I could. So if I messed up, they were going to fitness to practice me and employment, probably law me in a contract way. So when I contacted the head of midwifery, director of midwifery, the risk and clinical governance team, the comms team, and the legal team, they were all like, ignore it. Your care was great, because it was all at the beginning, and you were never asked to go to coroners, and your statement was never used. And I was like, this is so confusing. So when I met with the legal team, they were like, her statement does not reflect you at all. So I was like, that's really strange. Now, they wouldn't give me the coroner's bundle because I wasn't named in the coroner. So I couldn't get the transcripts. So it was a bit like, it was really tough because they told me to ignore it. So I did. But then 19 days later, the 2 midwives that I set the group up with then went and wrote 3 different platforms at different dates, the same thing, their position statement, that I was responsible for the death of this baby.
The 2 people that you trusted,
yeah,
have gone and said, why would they do that?
Jealousy, envy, ego, unresolved trauma. But I'm going to say something, right? And I hope they're watching this, because they'll be watching all my podcasts because they're using it as evidence against me. Not that I give 2 shits, but they're traumatized as well. The system got them as well. They're victims of the system. All of them. We all are. I am. They are, because they were never treated right. They were never heard. They were never nurtured by the system. They were never encouraged by managers to speak up. They were never softened. They were treated no different to me, you, or anyone else. So we all came together and mirrored each other from a really negative place. Whereas now I'm like, right, we could probably resolve this if we were all sat down in a room with a cup of coffee. But it's got too far. Like, it's been dragged out so long. So what I did was I decided to ignore it, and I went away offline. I'm not going to speak about the bit in the middle because it's evidence that I'm producing. But come the August, I stopped all my social media stuff. I just stopped whistleblowing. And then in the November, I opened my own X channel and thought, I don't really use X that much. It's a hard platform to get on with. And I thought, right, I'm just going to start sharing my midwifery stories anonymously. But when it went so big, in the February, an account in Australia with 150,000 followers shared my face, my name, the original publications, and said that I was implicated in the death of this baby. And at that point, I thought, do you know what? The legal team told me I could share my coroner's statement because it was of public interest. So I shared it on her post. Within a day, she had deleted everything. So I then got legal advice, got a no-win, no-fee solicitor and barrister, and they are helping me with the case. And we've got a high court media and communications in the High Court. But what was really sad is that when I contacted this account and said, "Can I just ask? I've got to present this evidence to the court. Where did you get your source from?" And she actually apologized to me and she said, "I couldn't verify that you were implicated in the death of this
Wow.
baby." So I was like, this is all
So
spitefulness.
they've just seen something and then just posted it without checking. I mean, you're not accusing somebody of parking a bit bad down the street, aren't you? You're accusing somebody of the death of a child. So, I mean, that sounds absolutely horrendous. That sounds a horrendous thing to be accused of, and not even accused privately, but quite publicly as well. So, how did that affect you, having that allegation made?
Oh, Jay, it was the worst experience. I honestly thought the police were going to come and get me. I thought if I've killed a baby, I'm going to be Lucy Letby. I'm going to be in prison. How can I prove this? Like, what is happening? It goes right into your brain and it goes right through your body, and you then actually at one point start going, "Did I kill that baby?" You go crazy.
Yeah.
You're like, "Did I do something? Was I at the birth?" I can't explain, but now that makes sense why people go so crazy, because you then start questioning your own belief system that you might have done something, because you think, well, why are all these people thinking that? So what it did do is it made me question the hospital, if they had they changed something. So I wrote to the hospital and asked if they had changed my coroner's statement in any way, and they wrote back and said absolutely not. They sent me my original one, and they sent me the one that I had to amend, because in a coroner's statement you cannot give opinion or emotion, you have to just give fact. That's it. So
Right.
I could only write what I wrote in the notes. I was not allowed to write what I heard after or what I might have known before. I couldn't write anything. I wasn't allowed to. And you had no, what was really sneaky about that, they never offered me legal support to write that. Now that's naughty. Every
Right.
midwife that ever gets to write a coroner's statement should take it away and go and get independent legal advice, because
Mhm.
I've realized now that that document could have been broader. I could have put in a different answer, but you are told what you can and can't write. And also, you're not allowed to read the whole of the notes in the case. So you're only allowed your block. So the next person after me, I don't know what they've written. So I can't question if they're telling the truth or not. And that's what was really
Mhm.
fascinating about the whole thing. I realized, oh, it's another setup of blocks of information again. But I'll be honest, Jay, when I did that, I was so scared that I was going to get arrested. Genuinely, I knew the police were going to come to my door at some point, which they did, and I was so scared that as the day that my notice ended on the 7th of April, I wrote to the NMC and I removed my registration, and I wrote a letter to them actually saying, "I do not want the public shame of you putting me through a fitness to practice for a baby that I never was at the birth. I did everything right in line with the policies. That's why my statement was never
Mhm.
used." And I came off that register, and I wrote that in an email to them at that very time saying, "This is why I came off the register." And I said, "I don't want the public shame that you've done to other people." Obviously, they responded saying they couldn't do anything, but
So you weren't there at the birth. You haven't done any malpractice,
no
and yet
feedback.
you're still being accused of this horrendous thing,
I honestly think when these people read what I have to present, I'm going to stand strong that it was a mistaken identity.
right? Well, I know you can't go too much into it because it's ongoing, but the absolute best of luck with that. It sounds like a horrific thing to be accused of. Um, really, and considering that you joined that service to help children and to help people to give births. Um, you mentioned about Lucy Letby there, and of course she's very much in the news at the moment about the validity of her conviction. Um, we know that organizations protect the organization first. Speaking from experience of, like I said, being in the police, and you're speaking from experience of being in the NHS, the organization will take care of the organization and they will silence dissenters. Do you think there's something more nefarious happened with Lucy Letby?
My gut instinct tells me that Lucy is innocent. That's my gut. That's me. That's my opinion. I think because I know the system and I've now been talking to so many people. And if you speak to Alistair Frost, who is the founder of Insight, he would happily come on. He his partner had their daughter in 2015, and he witnessed malpractice in NICU, which is where Lucy Letby would have worked. And whenever he tried to raise concerns, he was threatened that he was going to be arrested. And later on, he was arrested and he was put in a mental hospital. And
Right.
it ruined his life that much at that time that they never had any more children because they were so fearful of going back into that system. So when you hear stories like that, you're like, right. And then another dad has come forward. Now you might want to speak to him. He's very, very big on TikTok. Amar, and he's Adora's dad, AMA, and then it's Adora. She was a twin, and she was doing very well when she was born, and then she became very poorly. And he again witnessed that they weren't taking proper care of his daughter. And when he raised it, they started attacking him, as you can imagine, lying on documentation. And he's very vocal about whistleblowing about that online. And he's involved in the Nottingham inquiry, which is quite big at the moment, where they've got the corporate manslaughter charges ongoing at the moment. So what I think I've learned is that your nursing and midwifery body have got the suicide of 33 nurses and or midwives on their register that have committed suicide since 2016, because they've either been referred for maliciously, or they've been referred for something that they have highlighted in the system, and the system is now saying, no, you're being referred, and then they all collude together and they get you off the register because they want to ruin your career. So having heard all of that from a patient perspective, midwife and nurse's perspective, and Justine Winter is also a whistleblowing nurse from Wales, she has uncovered fraud in the agency staff, that they're not qualified from the eastern part of the world, that they're not even qualified and they're working in these hospitals. She's unearthed a huge tax avoidance of nursing. And she had a bolt like this size thrown at her house. She's been referred to the NMC for stealing oromorph. She's like, and stealing money. And she was like, I didn't do it. So hearing all of that, but not denying that, I cannot imagine that the parents who went to trial and had justice for their baby loss, they live in a place of mixed emotion, that not only is someone found guilty and serving time for the justice of the loss of their babies, imagine now going online and seeing a wave of support that Lucy Letby might be innocent. Mm-hmm. What does that do to them and their babies and their justice and their victim status? Because they're all victims. It also brings in the police who investigated it, and then the corporation and the CEOs. It's all a big question mark, isn't it, Jay?
Absolutely. So with you on about the children there, I watched a documentary, the latest Panorama one recently, because I know of officers who, I have friends who, well, I say friends, I don't speak to them anymore. They've kind of distanced themselves from me now.
Same here, don't worry.
So they have actually met Lucy when she was in custody. So as a result of that, I'm kind of interested in what happens, and more just because of the thing. What I've always thought is there was never any kind of motive expressed, or she's always, pertained her innocence. And I'm not here to say whether she's innocent or guilty, but with the family, it must be one, it's utterly tragic. It's the worst thing a parent can imagine, is the child dying. And then to kind of heal from that, or not heal from it, but learn to accept it and live with it. And then to be told, actually, your child could have survived, they died at the hands of somebody else. And then to go through all of that, and now to be told, to see that actually, well, there is a growing movement that maybe it wasn't this person after all, it was potentially neglect from the hospital. So before I started on this kind of this journey, and the people I've spoken to, people such as yourself, Izzy Vine, and I'm researching a new book now. So my first book's called The Jobs Fuck. This is going to be called The Systems Fuck. So it's talking about police all the way through to prisons, the courts, and everything else. And I've spoken to quite a few people. Corruption is quite rife throughout the entire organisation, all the way to the top. So one thing what an officer has said to me before, And this is just in relation to the Lucy Letby thing and your experiences. We believe that these organizations are valiant and they are, they're honest, but it isn't necessarily the case. If it's something which they can deflect from themselves onto somebody else, then they're more than willing to do so. And I had an officer turn around to me one time when I was speaking to them. They were off sick. That it was similar to what happened to yourself in that they trusted a colleague who then essentially went against them. So this officer was off sick with the flu, for example. They then went out for a dog walk or a coffee with a colleague. The colleague has then taken a photo of him and sent it to their supervisors and said, "Look, they're actually pulling the wool over your eyes here. They're completely fine." This officer was like, "Yeah, I was well enough to go out for a walk, but I went to bed like straight afterwards." Anyway, so while a year later, this person was suspended under gross misconduct as a result of this. They were then diagnosed with cancer while they were off, and they presented that to the police and said, "Just to let you know, I won't be probably coming back for a while because I need to have treatment." They then accused this officer of lying, that even though they presented all the evidence to them, all their hospital evidence, and said, "No, here's my chemotherapy schedule, here's all this, here's my surgery timeline," accused her of lying, and then the organization then fucked up because they fought against it and said that this wasn't okay, but they were CC'd into quite an, I don't know the ins and outs of it, they were CC'd into an incriminating email, basically accusing her of lying and everything else. And then when they asked for the freedom of information request, this email was nowhere to be found. So they changed evidence, they'd hidden evidence, they deleted evidence, which would implicate the organization because it looked like they were doing wrong. And of course, then what they wanted to do was they then wanted to strike off this officer as quickly as possible for this marginal error in the past. So when I think of people being dismissed, people being accused of things, people even being arrested or even sent to prison over something they've potentially done, when you look at the organization as a whole, I think it's incredibly likely that there is something else which has occurred and this person is a scapegoat. Like I said, that's not to suggest that this is the case when it comes to Lucy Letterby, but it certainly does happen.
There's too many of these situations, Jay. I've got hundreds of comments like this in my inboxes from midwives saying I'm being targeted as the death of a baby, and I didn't even see that patient for many weeks before, because you then start unpicking the system. And I was really pissed off when I saw that Nottingham were having corporate manslaughter. You tell me, when there's a victim, if there's a crime, there's a victim. Okay, so if we've got all these babies that are victims of the system, they are victim of that because someone somewhere said we should do something. So, for instance, if a farmer is sat at his desk and one of his machines isn't working and someone gets killed by the machine, even though he wasn't at the machine, he's potentially culpable for manslaughter because he didn't have the health and safety checked for his farming equipment, right? Yeah. So how can a corporation you can't arrest a building. You can't arrest bricks and water and a door. You have to arrest a physical man or well, I'm so there. I'm like, right, why are people not realizing this? So no one's going to be held accountable for any of these baby deaths at Nottingham because they're only taking it under the corporation manslaughter of the system. Remove the 12 presumptions of law, remove their rights, and bring these people, lift the corporate veil and bring the individual to account. That is where I'm at. You don't get to hide behind this anymore. You do not get to hide behind your corporation because you're bricks and water with a door and a window. That cannot be liable. Someone somewhere made a decision about the care of these babies. They are liable. Mm. But the problem is it's so massive and the system is so corrupt and it's so corrosive that until the people on the ground ripple and rise and start to come together, which I do believe is now happening, you would never have seen two midwives ever be this brave before and actually go online and say, it's manslaughter, it's criminal negligence, and to think that I wrote to my local MPs, which I think I told you about, Gary Streeter, Luke Pollard and Johnny Mercer are my area, which means any of the patients at Derriford come under them. I wrote to them, and it was a very small email. I put it on my socials. I've just left Derriford, and not because I'm not resilient, but because this is criminal manslaughter, criminal harm, criminal negligence, or medical negligence, and borderline manslaughter. Sorry, you're not in our constituent. That's some emails I got back.
Right.
I'm like, I've just told you, and you'll love this. Rebecca Smith is my MP, and I went and met with her recently. And I told her, and her little PA was typing the minutes of our meeting. And I'm learning that when I say the words that one of the directors told me, that people go missing overnight who whistleblow, when I told her that, she didn't flinch. So I thought, you've heard this
Right.
before, or on a similar scale.
Well, I remember when you told me that on the phone before we had obviously got talking, my reaction was quite strong to you saying something like that,
Yeah.
which because I'd never heard it before. So yeah,
I
the
was
fact
like,
that someone just hasn't flinched at
and
all.
but yet her PA was like this. She'd not heard that before. So I was like, oh, that's the reaction I was hoping for. So I've
Yeah,
realised that they all know what's going on. They're all aware. And the only way we can fix this, Jay, is we have to heal ourselves. We have to forgive each other. We have to apologize to each other for any harm that we've caused inadvertently. We have to find peace in ourselves, and we have to stand together stronger. That is the only way. And we have to start teaching women and young girls that before they get pregnant, they need to be healthy in mind, body, soul, spirit. They need to be ready and prepared. They need to know what to say when they go into the system, what questions they need to be asking, and not just expecting a system to look after you because it's not fit for that reason. And that's the only way we fix
yeah.
this.
We need to put patient care and the public at the forefront of what we do. Too long and too much happens in these multi-layered corporations or organizations where there's a middle management for this and there's a director for this obscure thing over here. It gets to the point where people are just interested in their own self-preservation and their own jobs, and they forget the reason why they joined. It's do no harm, it's uphold the law, it's make sure that you are protecting the public in whatever way you can. And the only way how you do that is by ensuring that the people who are charged with that duty and that responsibility are the best equipped and the best trained and the best ability to do it. And things such as like empathy burnout is a huge issue.
Yeah.
Um, I suffered with it. I know officers that have suffered with it. Someone is telling you the worst thing that has ever happened to them, and for want of a better phrase, you just don't feel anything because they just become another incident, and that is just a sign.
Mm.
But burnout is a sign that you need to be more looked after. You need to take some time off. So empathy burnout's a huge thing. I'm sure it was a case in the NHS. You're dealing with awful things all the time.
Mm.
You're trying to look after people, and then of course you've got it's like a sandwich, and it's no wonder people break because you've got the incidents themselves and the actual mechanics of what you deal with, but then you've also got the organizational issues, the issues from management, you're getting attacked from the side by your fellow colleagues and everything else. Victoria, I wanted to talk to you about something which you said to me on the phone, which I found quite hard to believe until I actually had a conversation with somebody today. And you mentioned about when a child dies, there's something quite insidious happening to some of them. Do you want to elaborate a bit more on that?
Yeah. So when I left midwifery, I didn't know this at the time. So whenever you send off a placenta to histology, it goes to a place out of region. And my name's on it, my signature, I would send it, but I would never be able to, because of GDPR and data protection, find out where that placenta went or what happened to it. Obviously, we now know why GDPR was even invented, to protect those in power. So I never really thought about that. And then when I left, someone was doing some investigations for me into my hospital and some of the staff that I worked with. He did that off his own back, and he came back to me and he said, do you know that your stem cells and placentas are sold and taken from some hospitals? And I was like, what are you talking about? And when I asked someone who was in the makeup industry, in the beauty industry, they actually knew that stem cells from the placentas were in some of women's makeup. And I was like, what? So Kate Shimarani,
That's fucked up.
yeah, it's in some makeup because stem cells are so healing. So I was like, don't be so stupid. But I then spoke to Kate Shimarani and John O'Looney and started speaking to a lot of people about the things that they had seen and learned over their careers. Kate's an ex-nurse. You've probably heard of Kate. She was the one that went out and did the shut down a vaccine centre in London and got arrested. She's absolutely brilliant. She works so hard. And I just thought, what is this? But then I started realising we put everything in the sluice. Urine, sick, poo, it goes in the sluice and it goes in the macerator and it goes away, but the placenta doesn't. Why would you not put that in the sluice? It goes in the bin. So unless the family want to take it home or it gets sent off for investigations.
And cook it, which is another thing I find very weird.
So I was like, what's going on here? But then John O'Looney told me that he has learnt, he is a funeral director in Milton Keynes, very vocal on X, a brilliant guy. He actually said that many babies have come to him and they have had their organs removed and the parents have never consented and the parents don't know and it's not on the records. Okay. So I'm like, well, why? And he's like, well, it's ritual, it's on the black market, there's money to be made from them. And I was sick. I was like urging. But then I learned about the cutting of the cord and the birth certificate fraud of our corporation. And I started piecing all of that together. And then I started thinking, maybe I was never meant to be a midwife after all. Maybe the journey was to learn the system, to be able to facilitate it to the masses and start talking about it. So people will go, oh my gosh, she's absolutely mental. But actually, everything I've learned has not been denied. It's not, you can't deny it. So yeah. John O'Looney, actually, this is what's harrowing. On a Friday, they would always go and collect the babies from the mortuary at the local hospital. That was what they did. He said it was almost like you saluted, you all got goosebumps. And he said, and it was always very, very somber because they've not had a chance to live, whereas a lot of other people have lived. And you go into that job a bit like what you go into the birth of life. It's as respectful at the end. There's a lot of emotion and there's only certain type of people can deal with that type of emotion, I believe. Anyway, so he, during COVID, was stopped collecting any of the babies that had died during COVID. And when he went to a funeral, on the board at the funeral, it would say the funeral directors that were dealing with the service, and it had the hospital's name on it. And he was like, how can they be a funeral service all of a sudden? So they then started taking all the babies from the mortuary for themselves. And we don't really know what then happened. So he said they started taking all the babies. So then when I started looking into that and realizing that during COVID, a lady that was laboring in one of the rooms on the ward, she wasn't allowed her mother with her because of COVID restrictions. She was only allowed her partner. But yet the stem cell researcher was outside the door. Now, apparently, I haven't been able to verify this fully, but this has come from multiple sources. Placentas are worth about $50,000. So why are we making money out of organs? I don't understand it. But actually, if you go back through history, grave robbing and organ stuff has always been quite a dark thing. But
if they approach the parent and said, say the child hasn't survived the birth, and they said, would you like to donate any tissue from the child to help with research or to help with future then at least you're giving the parents a choice. It's not done via the back door. We just won't say anything. And I actually, when you first told me that, I found it was difficult to believe because it sounds so like out there. And obviously I believe you with what you're saying. And more so than that, I actually had a conversation with a family member today, because I mentioned, I'm going to be speaking to you, and this is one of the things what they said, and they sent me a message, and it was about an hour ago before we got chatting, and my head's still falling off as a result. And they said, so when I was younger, a bit of family history, like my uncle Terry was involved in like criminal gangs and stuff, and he had been killed. He was murdered as a result of his involvement. Now, our funeral was had for him. He then was put into the ground, buried, all the rest of it. And 20 years went by, or 15 to 20 years went by, and my grandmother got a knock on the door from the CID, so from detectives, and basically said, when he died, we took his organs out so that they could be held in case there was any more criminal investigations. What do you want us to do with them? Now, initially, we're thinking, well, ideally, I didn't want you to take them out in the first place, but there was no signature, there was no request for this to happen. There was no, I believe they can do it in certain investigations if they think it'll help further down the line, but it's the whole consent thing. Like, why did they not say anything?
Mm.
And before we even had this conversation, I didn't think that was even a thing. So now I know it's a thing and it's being done. It's not then too far a step to go, well, if there's a lot of money in it, and we know these organizations have people who are in them for the wrong reasons, then is it possible that this is actually occurring? Because once that child's taken away, the next time you may be around that child is at the funeral. There's a lot happens between that point and that point.
And imagine going to the funeral of your child and you thought every part of them was intact, and then you find out their own heart, the heart that pumped the love that they had for life. And I said this to my dad recently, because my dad, he's a stoic Navy man, Scottish Navy man, so you can probably imagine what kind of character I'm talking about. I said to him, Dad, if I was to cut you open from head to toe and open you up, I would never ever know that you loved boats. I would never know that you loved the water. I would never know that you loved all foods, that you had a heartbreak at this age, that you loved Simon and Garfunkel. No one would know that about you. You can't destroy that. We are more than just our physical. So imagine the heart that my dad has carried, the love for his daughters, the love for his grandchildren, the love for anybody he's been with. You take that whole hub of that person, and then to find out that was never with them, it's not right.
Yeah.
It's not right.
Yeah.
It's not right at all.
It's utterly awful if that's the thing that happened. And you see, with something like that, you would think it would be headline news, with somebody coming out and saying they are taking the organs of dead children and selling them on the black market or doing whatever with them without the parents' consent or with even the parents' knowledge. I mean, God, I'd hate to think how many times that's happened. And even with cases such as my uncle, like the police doing it for investigations, or is that just what they said? You don't know. So why is this not the headlines? Why is it taking me to get in contact with you and speak to you for me to even discover this?
Who owns the media?
So you think that's another part of it as well? Okay,
The
now my
media,
head's
the
going to fall off by the
media,
end of this chat.
the media is owned by the same people that own the banking and the same. So there's three things in the world that they own. These globalists: economy, politics, and legal. The economy is everything to do with your money or your currency or how you live, how you feed, anything. We know what politics are, so we know who. Do we really think that Keir Starmer was voted in? I don't believe that at all. So then you start
I
thinking.
know there's a reason why you won't stop them boats,
So there's all of that going on.
because we know how to do it.
Exactly. And then your legal system. Now I've just proved the legal system is is corrupt, because I've just put a case in against Jacobs Enforcements, who could not prove their their liability order that was signed by a magistrate judge. I took that to the courtroom. They harassed me. Now, harassment, Jay. If someone's harassing you every day for 14 days, 3 times a day, that's harassment. That's a lot. Even the judge said it was a lot.
Yeah.
He still struck out my claims, knowing it was strong enough, with a 332-page bundle, and he slapped me with a 4,700 cost order. I've walked it. I walked the fake judicial system, and I was like, you don't own this courtroom. I do. You cannot tell me to shut up when I am the claimant in these proceedings. So I'm learning that we need to break the administrative courts. We need to have our own common law back. We need to have the people's courtrooms back with our own jury. No case, in judiciary terms, no case can ever be heard without a jury. It's fact. It's, all you got to do is go back and watch something like Pole Dart, and it tells you it all on the program.
Well, the jury thing's going out the window, a lot of it now. So I was speaking to a barrister, and I remember seeing this in the news, and it was because the courts are so clogged up and they don't have enough judges and barristers and everything else, and it's taking cases years to get to even court. Never mind then the sentencing and naturally as a result of that, people then withdraw support because it's too long. This goes for, in particular, cases of say sexual assault and rape because of how long the cases take to get to court. They say the charge rate for the conviction rate for rape is really, really low. And that's for a number of reasons. But one of them is because of how long it takes to get to court. I mean, you can be talking 6, 7 years at
It's
some point.
disgusting.
Now, in an effort to combat this, what they're doing is they're looking at not even having a trial, a judge sitting with two magistrates with the evidence of defense and prosecution going through and then making their mind up. Now, this is without a jury.
No.
This is without a defense barrister arguing your case or a prosecution arguing why you should be thrown into prison. And it's all in an effort to make the courts look better because look at how many cases we're now getting through. Okay, it might speed things up,
Mm.
but where's my day in court? Where's my right
You
to
can't.
defend myself? Or where's my right to point to the abuser and say,
Article
this is
6.
what this fucker did to me?
Exactly. Article 6, human rights, your right to a fair trial. Doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter whether it's a parking fine, a police speed camera, you have a right to a fair trial before you are found guilty of anything. And if we go back to our common law and we go back to our treason oath and our coronation oath, go back to our Bill of Rights 1668, 69, we go back to the Magna Carta. If people scrap off the 12 presumptions of law, no disrespect, Jay, about obviously you being ex-police officer, but if people start forgetting that acts and statutes are not law and go back and actually look at what is natural law, you can argue every single letter they ever send you. You are not part of their corporation. You are a living man or woman. End of story. And so far it's worked for me because, like I said, the NMC put me on notice. When I actually sent them back my own common law, 3 documents, I've never heard from them since. They've agreed by silence that what I wrote in it was fact.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Mm.
Very interesting. So, Victoria, just before we finish, I've just got I know a midwife, and I thought I would like to ask a midwife questions what they would like to put to you. So I've got a couple of here. What's your views on the future of midwifery?
Ooh. I believe it needs completely dismantling. It needs to be away from the hospital because although pregnancy is not a medical condition, it's a natural, it's no different to your heart beating, the baby, part of our evolution. It needs to be away from the hospital. We need to work alongside the doulas and the birth keepers who have astronomical good outcomes. They're getting it right. But what we've got is we've now got
I don't know what a doula is.
so a doula is not a qualified midwife, but they only do work with the woman that is emotional, spiritual. They don't do bloods, they don't do vaginal examinations. They help you through your pregnancy and birth, and it's outside of the system. And it is beautiful. I would have used them myself. A birth keeper potentially could be someone that uses herbs for medicine. So they use different names for different things. But let me tell you, Jay, when you look at their statistics, they are outshining the NHS right now. So there's a lady a midwife in Uganda who's an Irish midwife, sorry, and in 10 years she's never lost a mum or baby in labour. She doesn't have scans. She doesn't do bloods. She does urine checks. She palpates. She listens in. And when they come in labour, and these women are sometimes malnourished, they've got different diseases over there. She never lost a mum or baby in labour. She's only ever seen harm when she's transferred them to the local hospital in Uganda. So we need to start looking at what these other amazing women are getting right. And then I think what we need to do is it is going to be almost a multifaceted recovery. So you've got to get the midwives out and de-traumatized, you need to make sure that they are back in their sensitivity of really what's happened, talking about what's happened, healing what's happened, merging in from where the doulas are to take over the healthcare. But the problem is you've got a higher BMI, you've got more autoimmune disease, you've got COVID vaccine injuries, which I believe the doulas are now picking up that care, but they're not trained for that. So they've had to go on additional training to train for stillbirths, which they never did before. So they're having to pick up a lot of the slack. So I think that is such a great question, but the only way we're going to do that, Jay, is with the midwives' voices. So what we've got is a
Yeah.
surge of women's voices on this side being picked up by national inquiries and maternity inquiries, but you haven't got the balance of the midwives. So until the midwives whistleblow, because it's the only way to protect them in law, it's the only thing we've got to go with that's positive. Grievances get you nowhere. No one wins. They even say that themselves. That comes out of their own mouth. No one wins at grievances. Yes, you're right. You're telling me, which means you're showing me no one wins. Why did I even bother? Whistleblow internally. Whistleblow all your concerns. If you go online and look at the 5 or 6 whistleblowing things, I bet you were in one of them. Then start writing a full journal of what's going on in your shifts, on your shifts. Write an affidavit statement of truth and have it embossed by a solicitor. Have it signed to say this is exactly what's going on to protect you. Even if it's 10 years old and something happens to you 10 years later, you've got a document that stands up because it's been signed by a legal representative. That's the start of the midwives. Then you've got the women. So you need to get the women educated in the community, in their families. So I'm going to give you this. Go and find the oldest person you know, woman, and go and ask her about her birth, about what happened with council tax, what happened with gas, electricity, what life was like, what happened when they were pregnant, who did they see, and learn the knowledge, because you are one generation from being forgotten. And that is the big problem we've got to fix this system. We need to get rid of the absolute arseholes in these corporations. We need to get rid of the absolute idiots who are running these inquiries and are just giving advice which just makes it worse and then gaslights women into taking money and shutting up. That doesn't give you justice. That doesn't give you truth. So it's huge for me.
Unfortunately, when it comes to things like NDAs, etc., it goes back to how much is your soul worth. You could go online and you could do exactly what you've done and say, look, this system it really needs help and support and a complete overhaul.
Yeah.
Because the people that suffer are the people who need it.
Yep.
And we would need to go back to grassroots, like you said, and focus on the patient, focus on the people. But then the organizations go, well, we don't really want people knowing everything what's going wrong. So here's £10,000 if you say you won't say anything. And then some people, because of financial situation or whatever, they go, I'll take the money. And I don't blame people for doing that. I can understand the reasons why someone would do that, but it's only by people speaking out will other people feel that they have the confidence to actually raise their head above the parapet. And if enough people do it, there's enough noise gets created. Therefore, that puts pressure on the organisation to go, okay, well, we need to rectify this. Here's another one. So, not just talking about the midwifery section, is the NHS fit for purpose?
No.
Nice straightforward answer there.
No. We've got too much litigation, too much death, too much harm. We've got a sick nation. We've got sick elderly, sick children. We've got the biggest cancer rates. We've got the worst mental health rates. We are vibrationally low. We've got the worst issues in schooling. Everything is breaking. And the only way it fixes if people wake up and realize they are just a slave in the system and that they can change their life by choosing a different door.
So we say now we're the most advanced civilization we've ever had, but equally we're the most sick civilization we've ever had. ADHD is through the roof because kids can't concentrate, because people are glued to the phone, because of these devices which we have in our hands, which are designed to be addictive. People can't concentrate. People can't have a proper conversation with somebody anymore unless it's online. People can't listen to a full 2-hour podcast anymore because their attention is all over the place. When it comes to diet, we are then more overweight than ever before. We are got more diseases than ever before. Yes, we're living longer, okay, but what's the quality of people's lives when they get into their 80s, 90s years old?
How do you know we're living longer? The only people that tell us this information is the NHS. So the NHS hold all the statistics.
This is also true.
They're the ones that update the Office of National Statistics through the NHS. How do we know? How can we trust them and what they've done? So everything I now believe is fact is probably a lie. So I don't believe anything that they say. I don't believe that that they knew the statistics after the war of who died of Spanish flu. What else did they die of? What else did you give them? You vaccinated all of them.
So there's some healthy skepticism there, I suppose. And just when you're saying that, my auntie, she's in her 60s. She goes running ultra marathons. She travels the world. She's an absolute boss bitch. I love her to bits. Massive inspiration. She went traveling to Nepal, and she was walking up a side of a mountain. And there was a lady there, a Nepalese lady, who was walking, basically overtaking her, and she got chatting to her. She went with a guide, so she was able to communicate with the locals. This lady was fitter than her, and she was in her 50s at the time, fitter than her, and she was, I think, late 90s, nearly 100 years
Yeah.
old. And she had her faculties, her health was great, and the diet is much better. The diet was everything from the ground, which wasn't full of soil, which had been pumped with shit and chemicals.
Yeah.
It was, they had a sense of community. Everybody knew each other, which is one of the arguments why so many people have mental health and depression these days, is because everybody's so disconnected. Um, Most people don't know what the next door neighbor's called, let
No,
alone when the birthday is
true.
or anything like that. Like, the more what a society seems to become more advanced, the worse the people in that society actually seem to be becoming when it comes to mental health and everything else. So I understand the idea of medicine and that we want to, okay, this chemical for this and this vaccine for this. But I think a lot of it as well is we can actually go too far down the artificial route.
Mm.
We need to find that balance of,
Mm.
okay, what is medically proven, which can help and support people, but let's restore some of that more natural way of living.
Mm.
Like you mentioned about the more naturalistic people who help people during childbirth. Some people will look at that and go, well, like, fuck, am I having it at home? I'm going to go to a qualified midwife or to the hospital. But we know that the hospitals are falling to pieces. We know that the midwife who's treating you has probably had 3 hours sleep in the past 2 days. We know that they're probably not eating. We know that they're not cared for and they're stressed out their eyeballs. So it's a choice what people need to make. And I think it's having that informed choice, which is a big thing. And certainly, like you say, we look at the statistics of people going to hospital versus statistics of people going and having home births. You could argue about the reliability of those, but it's,
Everything in moderation, Jay. We can't just get rid of the NHS. That's dangerous as well. We can't all just birth
no, I
at home.
completely
That is
agree.
dangerous. It's not possible. It's like living in a country where your whole life you've been starved and then you come here and just start eating loads and loads of McDonald's. You would die. So everything needs delicacy, time, thinking, healing, nurturing, slow to rebuild it. Because if we don't act, in a minute we've got cesarean sections at 50% nearly. We've got to start acting, and it starts with the people.
Why? Why
Money.
so many
Money.
cesareans? Because childbirth is a. I mean, I know some people who have had to have cesareans because it's gotten
Yeah.
dangerous. But I also know someone who is, they identify as an opposite gender,
Yeah.
so they had a cesarean purely for mental health reasons. One of the argument, just to play devil's advocate here, would be, well, deaths through childbirth have gone down as a result of midwifery and the care people get at the NHS.
Correct.
What would you say about that?
Well, that's now not the case because we've got the worst outcomes now. We've got birth trauma at 1 in 3. We've got high rates of maternal
Really?
death. We've got high rates of baby death. That it's not. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Now, I'm going to put this out there. Only women have babies. Women, not men, not anyone else. Just women. Only women are born with a uterus and have a baby. But cesarean sections are being
Completely agree.
well, cesarean sections are being performed on women as young as 21 on their first baby. It was like, when I had my son in 2001, the cesarean section rate was 7%. We're now at nearly 50% in parts of the country. In Brazil, in the private hospitals, it's 90%.
And you say it's because of money?
Well, if you have a vaginal birth, it's costing anywhere up to £1,500. That's just for a basic vaginal birth. If you're having a section, it's anywhere up to £8,000.
Fuck me.
So if you think a bed space is £305 a night in the hospital, right? And the NHS say they're a not-for-profit organisation. That's not true. They've got a DUNS number. They've got a VAT number. They're a for-profit organisation. They've turned themselves into that. If that is the case, they need to make money. And making money is not about patient safety because they don't make money from making people well. They only make money from making you sick. So if a bed space is £305 a night, and they then start inducing 50% of all women and 50% potentially turn out to be sections, you could be in hospital for up to 5 or 6 days. That's a lot of money.
Victoria, everything you say, I think I could do another hour on that.
We could
I
we
could
could
do
go.
another 20 minutes on
Let's
that.
go.
We could just keep going. But I'm gonna have to say thank you very much. Any final messages, anywhere people can follow you, anything like that? Any last messages you want to share?
Yeah, I'm on TikTok, X, Instagram, just Victoria Rixon. You'll probably look me up on there. Um, Lots of things happening behind the scenes. I'm not as vocal on social media now. I think I'm up to about nearly 70,000 followers across all platforms. So I'm just kind of
It's amazing. Well
I'm
done.
doing a lot more work behind the scenes now. I've got a lot more people come forward, so that's taking away my presence publicly, and there's that's not a bad thing.
Mhm.
So I'm doing lots of work behind the scenes. I've got a lot of people helping me now. I've got a team behind me. So just I think people come to me to ask me questions about their care. I'm not here to give advice on care. I'm here to facilitate information about how you are not harmed. Now, that people might say that is by asking the question about care. Only you can answer the true question of whether you're safe and you feel safe and well. That comes from in you. No healthcare practitioner can tell you that. They can advise you, but only you choose your birth and only you choose your life. It's no one else's fault. It's no one else to blame. And I've learned that myself. So women, partners, families, all need to educate themselves and start looking back at what used to happen with birth and the outcomes. And I think we're just at a place where I'm at a place, Jay, that, if I got pregnant now and something happened to me or my baby, I feel strong enough and comfortable enough that that is meant to be for me. And nobody else would participate in that if it was naturally meant to happen. But how can we find the natural death encompassed in all the medical harm? You can't. So we've got a bit lost. It's all untangled. It's all completely confused. Women don't know where to look. You've got council tax bills coming in your door, an increase in all the money, and your car's broken down, and you've got 3 kids in summer holidays. It's not easy living right now. It's not fun. It's not easy. But we're all doing our part. You doing what you're doing with Izzy, and I do what I do with Tess and Justine and the doctors that have whistleblown. We're all coming now, and I think this is what's really important. It's time we start admitting that we know something's wrong. Thank you.
Sorry, Rixton. Thank you very much.
Thank you.